You're sitting on an airplane, looking out the window at the clouds below, maybe thinking about your destination or just enjoying the view. The window next to you is rounded, with smooth, curved corners that blend seamlessly into the fuselage. It's such a familiar sight that you've probably never questioned it. But here's something worth considering. Why are airplane windows round? Not square, not rectangular with sharp corners, but specifically designed with rounded edges. It seems like a minor aesthetic choice, something decided by designers who thought curved windows looked more modern or aerodynamic. But the truth is far more serious. The shape of airplane windows isn't about style at all, it's about survival. This seemingly simple design feature is the result of one of the most tragic and important lessons in aviation history, a series of catastrophic accidents that killed dozens of people and nearly destroyed the future of commercial jet travel. The story of why airplane windows are round is a story about stress, metal fatigue, and how a tiny crack in the wrong place can tear an aircraft apart at 30,000 feet. Let's explore right here on History of Simple Things. To understand why window shape matters so much, we need to talk about what happens to an airplane at cruising altitude. When a commercial aircraft climbs to 35,000 or 40,000 feet, the air outside becomes extremely thin and cold. At that altitude, the atmospheric pressure is only about a quarter of what it is at sea level, far too low for humans to survive without supplemental oxygen. To keep passengers and crew safe, the cabin is pressurized, meaning air is pumped in to maintain a pressure similar to what you'd experience at around 6,000 to 8,000 feet elevation. This is comfortable enough that most people don't need oxygen masks, but it creates a significant pressure difference between the inside and outside of the aircraft. The cabin might be at 11 or 12 pounds per square inch, while the outside air is at just 3 or 4 pounds per square inch. This difference means the fuselage is essentially a pressurized container, like a balloon or a soda can, constantly pushing outward against its own structure. Every square inch of the aircraft's skin is under stress, trying to expand against the metal that holds it together. This pressurization creates what engineers call hoop stress, a type of mechanical stress that acts along the circumference of a cylindrical or spherical structure. Imagine a barrel held together with metal bands. When you fill the barrel with water, the water pushes outward, putting tension on those bands. The bands have to be strong enough to resist that outward force, or they'll snap and the barrel will burst. An airplane fuselage works the same way. The aluminum skin of the aircraft is under constant tension from the pressurized air inside, and every rivet, seam, and opening in that skin is a potential weak point. Windows, being large openings cut into the pressurized structure, are particularly vulnerable. The metal around the window has to carry all the stress that would have been carried by the material that was removed to make the opening. This means the edges of the window experience concentrated stress, and how that stress is distributed depends entirely on the shape of the window. Here's where geometry becomes a matter of life and death. When you cut a square or rectangular hole into a pressurized structure, the stress doesn't distribute evenly. Instead, it concentrates at the corners, specifically at the sharp 90-degree angles where two edges meet. Engineers call these areas stress concentration points or stress risers. Think of it like pulling on a piece of fabric. If you pull on a smooth edge, the fabric stretches evenly. But if there's a small tear or notch in the fabric, all the stress concentrates at that point, and the tear spreads rapidly. The same thing happens with metal under stress. At a sharp corner, the stress can be many times higher than it is in the flat areas of the structure. Over time, this concentrated stress causes microscopic cracks to form. These cracks grow with each pressurization cycle, every time the plane takes off and climbs to altitude, then descends and depressurizes. Eventually, the crack can grow large enough that the metal suddenly fails, and when metal fails on a pressurized aircraft, the results are catastrophic. The world learned this lesson in the most tragic way possible in the early 1950s through a series of disasters involving the de Havilland Comet, the world's first commercial jet airliner. The Comet was a revolutionary aircraft, sleek and beautiful, capable of flying higher and faster than any passenger plane before it. When it entered service in 1952, it represented the future of air travel. But on January 10, 1954, a comet broke apart in midair near the island of Elba in the Mediterranean, killing all 35 people on board. Investigators initially suspected sabotage or pilot error, but they couldn't find conclusive evidence. Then, on April 8, 1954, it happened again. Another comet disintegrated at altitude near Naples, killing all 21 people aboard. The entire comet fleet was immediately grounded, and the British government launched the most intensive aviation investigation in history up to that point. What investigators discovered changed aviation design forever. They recovered wreckage from the ocean floor and painstakingly reconstructed the aircraft like a giant jigsaw puzzle. They found that the fuselage had torn apart starting from the corners of the windows. To confirm their suspicions, they conducted an unprecedented test. They took a complete comet fuselage and placed it in a massive water tank, then subjected it to repeated pressurization cycles, simulating takeoffs and landings over and over again. They pressurized and depressurized the fuselage thousands of times, far more than the accident aircraft had experienced, to accelerate the process of metal fatigue. After the equivalent of about 3,000 flights, cracks began to appear. And they appeared exactly where the investigation predicted, at the corners of the square windows. The cracks propagated from these stress concentration points, growing with each cycle until the structure could no longer hold together. When the fuselage finally failed, it tore apart catastrophically, just as the accident aircraft had done at 35,000 feet. The problem was metal fatigue combined with stress concentration. Every time the aircraft climbed to altitude and pressurized the cabin, the fuselage expanded slightly, stretching the metal. Every time it landed and depressurized, the fuselage contracted. This constant cycle of expansion and contraction, even though the changes were small, caused microscopic damage to accumulate in the metal structure. In most areas of the fuselage, this fatigue progressed slowly and predictably. But at the sharp corners of the windows, where stress was concentrated to several times the normal level, the fatigue damage accumulated much faster. The Comet's windows also had another design flaw. They were attached with rivets that were punched through the skin rather than drilled, which created additional stress concentrations. And the windows were relatively large, which removed more structural material from an area that was already highly stressed. All of these factors combined to create a perfect storm of structural weakness. The solution was elegantly simple. Eliminate the corners. By making windows round or oval with smooth, curved edges, the stress is distributed evenly around the entire perimeter of the opening. There are no sharp corners where stress can concentrate and cracks can initiate. Think of it like the difference between bending a wire into a circle versus bending it into a square. The circle curves gradually and smoothly, while the square requires tight, sharp bends at the corners. Those sharp bends are where the wire is most likely to break. The same principle applies to openings in pressurized structures. A round window allows the stress to flow smoothly around the opening, like water flowing around a smooth rock in a stream. A square window forces the stress into tight corners, like water hitting a sharp obstacle, creating turbulence and concentrated forces. After the Comet disasters, every aircraft manufacturer in the world redesigned their windows. The lesson was clear and undeniable. Sharp corners on pressurized aircraft are deadly. Modern airplane windows have generous radii at their corners, typically with curves that are several inches in radius. Some are fully circular, while others are more rectangular, but with significantly rounded corners that eliminate stress concentration. The window frames are also carefully designed to distribute loads evenly into the surrounding structure. Multiple layers of acrylic or polycarbonate are used for the window panes themselves, with the innermost pane often being a scratch shield that's not structural. The outer panes are the ones that actually hold the pressure, and there's usually a small hole in the middle pane to equalize pressure between the layers and prevent fogging. The tragic irony of the Comet story is that the aircraft was actually ahead of its time in many ways. It pioneered jet travel, demonstrated the viability of high-altitude flight, and proved that passengers would embrace the speed and comfort of jets over propeller-driven aircraft. But its designers didn't fully understand the implications of pressurization cycles and metal fatigue. The science of fracture mechanics was still developing in the 1950s, and the idea that microscopic cracks could grow over time to cause catastrophic failure was not widely appreciated. The Comet disasters accelerated research in these areas and led to the development of better testing methods, better materials, and better design practices. Engineers learned to analyze structures for stress concentrations, to test materials for fatigue resistance, and to build in safety margins that account for crack growth over an aircraft's lifetime. The principle of avoiding sharp corners extends far beyond airplane windows. You'll find the same design philosophy in pressurized spacecraft, submarines, pressure vessels, and even in everyday objects like pressure cookers. The portholes on ships and submarines are round for exactly the same reason airplane windows are round. The hatches on spacecraft, the doors on pressure vessels, even the viewing windows on industrial equipment all avoid sharp corners to prevent stress concentration. This is a fundamental principle of engineering. When you create an opening in a structure that's under stress, the shape of that opening determines where and how stress will concentrate. Round or oval shapes distribute stress evenly, while sharp corners create dangerous concentration points. Modern aircraft design takes this lesson to heart in countless ways. Not just windows, but doors, access panels, inspection hatches, and any other opening in the fuselage are designed with generous corner radii. Computer modeling allows engineers to simulate stress distribution throughout the entire structure and identify potential problem areas before a single piece of metal is cut. They can model how stress flows through the airframe under various loading conditions, how cracks might initiate and propagate, and how different design choices affect structural integrity. Advanced materials, better manufacturing techniques, and rigorous testing protocols all contribute to making modern aircraft incredibly safe. Commercial aviation is now one of the safest forms of transportation ever devised, and much of that safety is built on lessons learned from early disasters like the Comet crashes. It's also worth noting that aircraft go through extraordinarily thorough inspection and maintenance programs precisely because of metal fatigue. Every commercial aircraft is subject to regular checks where inspectors look for cracks, corrosion, and other signs of structural degradation. Areas that experience high stress, including around windows and doors, receive particular attention. Non-destructive testing methods like ultrasound, X-rays, and eddy current testing allow inspectors to find cracks that are invisible to the naked eye. If a crack is found, the affected part is repaired or replaced before it can grow to a dangerous size. Aircraft are also subject to major overhauls at regular intervals, where they're essentially disassembled, inspected, and rebuilt to ensure they remain airworthy. This intensive maintenance is one reason why commercial aircraft can safely operate for decades, accumulating tens of thousands of flight cycles without catastrophic failures. The story of airplane window shape is a powerful reminder that engineering is an evolving discipline, built on both successes and failures. Every disaster teaches lessons that improve future designs, and every generation of engineers stands on the foundation built by those who came before. The passengers who died in the Comet crashes didn't die in vain. Their tragic losses led to fundamental advances in understanding how materials behave under stress, how structures fail, and how to design for safety and longevity. The round windows you see on every airplane today are a memorial to those lessons, a visible reminder that good engineering often comes from understanding past mistakes and ensuring they're never repeated. So the next time you're looking out an airplane window at 35,000 feet, take a moment to appreciate those smooth, rounded corners. They're not just aesthetic choices. They're the result of careful engineering, informed by tragedy, tested rigorously, and proven over billions of flight hours. They're a testament to humanity's ability to learn from failure, to apply scientific principles to solve problems, and to create technology that's both powerful and safe. Those curved edges are quietly protecting you, distributing stress evenly through the airframe, preventing the concentration of forces that could initiate cracks. They're evidence that sometimes the most important design features are the ones you never think about, working invisibly to keep you safe while you focus on the view outside. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution.